On the last episode, we focused on my arrival and what I did as soon as I landed in Iceland. But do not dwell on what has happened in the past, but look to the future. This is day 2 of photographing Iceland. Day 2 was probably the most jam-packed day of adventure, solely because there was just so much achieved within it. I truly am thankful for all the days that I had in Iceland, as they were all adventurous and quite unique. As I said, it was a trip that truly captured lightning in a bottle. Starting off in Aurora Lodge, we had woken up to a beautiful and crisp morning. I took the opportunity to get some photographs of the fantastic landscape, distant mountain peaks off in the distance, and to get the drone up and flying to get that Icelandic flag on my DJI World flight tracker. There's plenty of swans in the early morning air, and I was still just trying to convince myself that I was really here. After getting the duster packed, we set off nice and early and stopped off at our first destination of the day, which was Seljalandsfoss waterfall. Seljalandsfoss is a very popular spot and quite famous for photography. You probably recognise this angle of it, but it's usually in a landscape style shot. I found it to be a pretty cool place. The initial walk up to it from the car park wasn't too far at all, and it was well framed for anyone to be able to take a good photograph of. Just watching and listening to the tons of water falling from the top of the cliff was amazing, and what I think the appeal about this waterfall is that you can walk behind it and see the backside of water, but be prepared, you will get wet, so just factor that in. Thankfully I had a rainproof anorak and trousers, as well as a protective camera sleeve to help combat against the water blowback, so I was sorted. I think these are some of my favourite shots I got whilst I was there. This leading up shot just taken from the car park itself. This portrait shot that has a nice light giving a glow through the cross section there. Lovely landscape shot that's up close and personal to it. This little hero shot which has nice little contrast between the yellow giving a pop of colour. The backside of water, it's just nice and clean to me. And this fantastic hero shot here. I love the composition in this one, the dark and moody tones, the contrast against the yellow rainproof. The pose is nailed to a T, and no one else is crowding this shot. It's just really gives a impactful feeling. With Seljalandsfoss, you're getting a 2-for-1 offer. Just a little farther on up, there's a path that leads you to a hidden waterfall that's named Gljúfrabúi. Gljúfrabúi is back in this little cave area with a little river running out the front of it. I've seen people get incredible shots like this, but sadly the water level was a little bit high and we hadn't brought welly boots or towels to cross through the gap and get to the other side. It's definitely something to keep in mind for the future if I go back, or had it have been the end of the day and we were travelling to our next staying location, I think we would have just powered through, took the shoes off and went inside to get a few shots. Instead I got this little long exposure shot before heading back towards the car park, only stopping briefly just one last time at Seljalandsfoss to get a lovely long exposure shot, which turned out to be fantastic. There's lovely foreground elements in it, nice moody tones with good framing, and the perfect water flow, which I was very pleased with. As we were leaving, the day crowds were starting to form up, so getting there nice and early in the morning will give you the opportunity to have people-free photography moments. From Seljalandsfoss we travelled on towards our next waterfall of the day, but not before stopping off Reynisfjara cave, which was halfway between the two locations. It's a cool man-made cave system that's theorised to have been used for a whole host of farming purposes, or early settlers to have possibly lived in. Needless to say, it's rather cool being built out of this tall obelisk part of the mountain. I didn't see any hidden people or trolls whilst I was there, but whenever I entered into the inner part of the cave, I was greeted by a host of tiny little people and their animals. Skógafoss was next. This is a much larger and grander in scale compared to Seljalandsfoss, but just as unique to get up close and personal to. Again, getting close to the waterfall does get you wet, so be prepared. The crowd levels here were a little higher, as again with most places in southern Iceland, people flock here in their hundreds by tour buses just to see all the natural landscape. I am told that while October is off-peak season, I couldn't imagine the crowd level during summertime here. There's a little stairway just off to the right of the waterfall that will take you up to the top plateau part, where you can see the water cascading off the edges of the cliff. It's certainly worth the climb for the views and to get up to the top and see it all, but I would say that it's a little tricky if you're not fit or you're quite unsteady on your feet, as it is a narrow sort of stairway with only one handrail and people are passing you as you're going your way down or making your way up. Besides the waterfall, both top side and bottom side, there is a breathtaking mountain just beside it, which offered some nice photographic opportunities, and to top it all off, there's some local cows just in the field beside the restrooms, which I managed to get some nice shots of as well, which was an added bonus. Shortly after departing Skógafoss, I took advantage of the straight and empty roads to get a few of these photographs, which has marked another set of photographs off my bucket list shot. I've always wanted to get this style of photograph of the empty straight road with the leading lines of the middle divider, and I always assumed I would have got this in the States if I eventually go on my road trip there, but it was quite unique and a pleasant surprise to get it whilst in Iceland. The next leg of the journey was the Sólheimajökull, the first glacier of the trip, and it turned out to be a bit more adventurous than I had originally planned. I would have loved to have done a glacier walking or hiking tour whilst I was in Iceland, but given the time of everything, it was just something that wasn't planned in. It was looked at, but given the price of things as well, we decided to sort of save it for another time, I guess. Originally I had planned just to drive up as close as I could, take a look at the glacier, take a few photographs and then walk away, but instead the glacier was like a magnet. It just kept on drawing me closer and closer, and I just kept walking and walking closer towards it. Tour groups were passing by with people who had booked onto the hiking tours, and other people were walking past as well who had actually just walked out to the glacier by themselves, which is something that you can do. The walk out to the glacier from the car park wasn't too far and the terrain was fairly solid, so I reckon anybody could sort of do this. It was pretty awesome to see the big glacier stretching up the mountainside and to see the icebergs floating in the water. As you approach, there's numerous signs highlighting the danger from tidal waves caused by the break-off of ice, quicksand, deep crevasses on the glacier, and the dramatic changing temperatures and structures that will affect you or kill you. And there's a little list of gear to bring if you're looking to hike on the glacier as well. But as I said, it was like a magnet that kept on drawing me closer and closer, and the landscape was changing around me, and I was just a short throwing distance away and decided to step up onto the glacier, because who else can say they've walked on a glacier? Saying that, I didn't go too far onto it because, again, I was not prepared clothing or gear-wise for a trek of that magnitude, and it would have been reckless. But to stand on it, taste the ice and look at the volcanic ash coating the ice, and to look back over the way that I had just come with several pictures capturing just how blue the ice was, I was very impressed and pleased I decided to come as far as I had. The plane wreck. This is one of the reasons why Iceland was always a place to visit for me and a driving force for my photographic journey. Ever since I watched a Peter McKinnon video of him in Iceland on this plane, I knew I wanted to do it for myself. This has always been a bucket shot photo for me for such a long time, and to have actually went here, got the perfect conditions and the perfect shot, apart from a little hiccup which I'll explain a wee bit further on, it was just amazing. And to have this happen on my second day in Iceland was even better. We pulled up into the parking lot for the plane wreck trek, and the trek is marked out by little yellow poles. It's a flat terrain the whole way there, and weather conditions will definitely impact your journey and levels of enthusiasm for walking it. Looking at the timestamps on my GoPro recordings, we arrived at the car park at roughly 2:50 PM and arrived at the plane wreck at 3:35 PM. So it was about 45 minutes of good solid walking at a good strong pace, which I would just estimate to be above the average level. There is a big massive bus which will take you the journey. It does cost something, but I feel the walk there is much more rewarding upon your arrival. The walk out does feel quite surreal in some magnitude because of how flat the ground is, and it gives you sort of an optical illusion of you not making any progress at all. And one thing that surprised me was the proximity of the plane to the sea. For some reason, in my mind, I always pictured it being in the middle of nowhere, which it technically is, but I didn't picture the sea to be beside it. So there's a fun fact. That aside, I did get the most incredible photos here, and I honestly can't get over how good they were and how they turned out. There was also not too many people by the time we arrived, which was another benefit of walking, especially if you aren't waiting for the bus, because the bus arrives, a load of people swarm off, they all swamp round the plane, and it crowds the photos a wee bit. We did spend a fair bit of time here taking a whole bunch of photos. It felt longer than it actually was, but it turned out to be about 25 minutes. However, the only problem was one very rude individual. As I was climbing up on top of the plane, she just disrespects all photography rules and stands beside the plane and tries to climb up after me. I'm like, no, it will not support two people. And whenever I tried to explain I was trying to get a photograph, she just stood there beside the plane and looked up at me. But with some Photoshop magic, I was able to get rid of her. But honestly, she was just so rude, especially whenever I was trying to get back down off the plane again. She again tried to climb up. But then again, sadly some people aren't taught manners. I took a final recording at 3:55 PM. And then as I got back to the car park, I looked and checked again, and it was 4:45. So the return journey was a little longer at about 50 minutes, but it's not bad going nonetheless. The return journey was a little colder, especially with the wind blowing directly in your face, but powering through, we got there no problem at all. Dyrhólaey and the Black Sand Beach. Dyrhólaey was the windiest point I've been to on Iceland, and a storm rolled in on our last few days there, of hurricane-force winds, chaotic weather, which caused North, South and East Iceland to close down and come to a standstill. Thankfully it was on the last day of our trip, so it didn't really affect us or our road trip. As I said, the timings were impeccable. But to put it into perspective, I would have loved to have seen the difference between that storm that blew in and the winds that I was experiencing that day atop the cliffs. They were very, very strong, and people were getting blown about left, right and centre. The viewpoint from Dyrhólaey is very nice to look back over what you had just travelled to get there. It's got cracking views of the beaches and the waves and the landscape. It is a beautiful sea arch, and I believe it's a haven for puffins during the seasonal months. I got some fantastic black and white photographs whenever I was up here as well, and the windy road on the way back down was fun to travel. Dyrhólaey was just another added on roadside stop for the journey, which was a delight to see before stopping off at our second last destination of the day, Reynisfjara, or the infamous Black Beach. This was an awesome spot, and it let me collect some black sand in my little sand collection. It's something I've been doing for a few years now. I have these mini bottles with corks at the end of them. I take a sample of sand from any location that I travel to, bring it home and put it in my travel sand box. It's a cool and unique idea, and I could show you in a future video sometime. The Black Sand Beach was packed with a lot of tourists at the time that we were there. I did manage to get some cracking shots of the landscape regardless. The waves here are apparently very dangerous and are known as creeper waves, so it's advised you do not get close to the water whatsoever, as there's like secondary waves inside the first wave which will drag you out into the ocean, which sounds delightfully horrifying, but I reckon I could swim it. Joking aside, there was one person I noticed who was just walking so close to the waves where they were crashing in, and as all that sort of bubbly afterwake and swell, whatever you call it, swamped in, they just stood there as it went up and over their feet. They didn't even try to run away from it. In fact, they walked towards it, and it was definitely above their ankles. And why they let this happen, I don't know, but it happened on a number of occasions, and I could think of nothing worse, as wet feet and shoes are my worst nightmare. I hate it. On the way out, however, I did get some fantastic sunset shots, and there was a nearby Icelandic church which offered even more photographic gold opportunities. The official last stop of the day was to the town of Vík. We called up at the Red Roof Church. I flew my drone round a little and got some nice aerial shots before we went down to the local supermarket to get a few items for dinner that evening. The final leg of our journey was a straight full hour and 20 minutes of driving, according to the maps, to Lake Boisier Guesthouse. That's probably not the correct pronunciation of it, but that's how I will always pronounce that in my head. The drive was fairly long, and during the dying light I did stop off around the lava fields to have a quick look before the world eventually plunged into darkness. Needless to say, driving at night on long singular straight roads was quite surreal, especially whenever you crossed over single lane bridges that made weird vibration noises, and you were looking out into the darkness seeing silhouetted figures just standing there as dark shapes against the flat and black landscape. The cool thing was the low-level moon just rising up out of the ocean, and the most unnerving thing was seeing an overturned RV that was just at the side of the road, beside a dark silhouetted farm. Wanting to avoid the hills have eyes type stuff, I kept driving, and eventually made it to Lake Bourget Guesthouse. This was definitely one of the quaintest little stays of the trip. We were both fairly exhausted by the time we had got there. I had a lovely hot shower as the pizza cooked, and as you can see from the photos, it's a really cosy and lovely stay. Certainly scoffed all the food as it soon came out, and quickly got into bed as I had set an alarm for 5 AM in the morning. That will be explained in next episode. The only downside was there was a family next door to us who were quite noisy, but I think after finally getting over to sleep, it wasn't much of a problem for me. And that concluded day 2. Stay tuned for next time. If you've been enjoying this series, please do give it a like and comment down below, and subscribe for more content that will be hitting your screen shortly. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.